So, welcome back to our Retail Smarts podcast. Today with me, I have Shane Lenton, CIO of Q Clothing. How are you today, Shane?
I'm great, thank you.
Thanks for being with us. So how did you get started in retail? I see that you've got quite a diverse background, everything from, finance to IT and all sorts of things. So tell me about your start in retail.
Yeah, so I started in retail about 11 years ago. Prior to that, as you mentioned, it was a lot of my prior IT work had been in finance with a bit of media and government. It was a time when I think retail was going through a real transformation in the sense of technology was starting to become more critical and a necessity from a retailer's perspective. So when I was approached about the job, it was an IT manager role at the time, and the opportunity to join an iconic Australian brand. My wife, or partner at the time, now wife, was a big Q fan, so I thought I definitely had to go in and see the team at Q and find out more about it, and being able to jump into an industry that that was in its infancy in a lot of senses around technology, and sort of almost a greenfield to build an environment and work with the business to really build platforms and the environment from scratch. It was an exciting opportunity.
And when you first started, coming into an industry that was quite a green field when it came to technology, how did you approach those conversations, or was it just that retailers were ready?
Look, I think retailers were definitely, and retail as an industry was becoming ready at the time, but at the same time, it was a lot about taking the business on the journey and understanding how technology could complement the business. I always say that the technology is only there to complement the business. It's the people, and particularly in Q's case, it's the designers and the quality of product and the manufacturing that really make the business who it is. But technology was certainly coming into the foray at that time, and it was about really taking the business on the journey to understand things that were done a certain way, where there was opportunity for optimization, and really to accelerate the growth of the business.
Great. And then, had you ever worked in retail prior to going to Q? Even your first job out as a teenager or anything like that, or was this really your first foray into retail?
Out and out retail, it was my first role, but early on, like a lot of people, I did the sort of hospitality, bar work and that sort of thing. So I think there's quite a lot of synergies around customers and the hospitality industry and retail. So that's I had a little bit of background there, but outside of that, I didn't sort of go through the sometimes some of the traditional paths as a cashier and similar.
I always find in these podcasts it's really fascinating to see where people have come from, or where they've started in part of what we would refer to as retail around hospitality and things like that, and then we kind of find our way back to the fold eventually, because I think as you say, it's always about the people, and it's about the product, and there is a certain feeling within our retailers that really does attract people back to the industry if they've ever had that experience. What would you say is your biggest achievement in retail or working for Q?
I'd say probably the biggest achievement is really building the foundations and introducing the platforms, and really driving that, as I call it today, unified commerce piece. So around that sort of multi-channel evolution to omni-channel, about getting, quite a few years ago, getting that single view of customer, the single view of inventory, and really getting the foundations in place to enable the business to really accelerate and innovate. I'd say that's certainly, I suppose, my biggest achievement for Q, and it's something that I think's really set us up for success going forward.
And what was the biggest challenge, that you faced in kind of implementing new technology and taking the business on that journey? What was the hardest part?
Look, I think retail is quite different to say, my finance background, in the sense of, in finance, it was different environments. You had sort of a lot of different budgets that you're working with, and coming into retail, it's really one of the things I've had to do from a very early stage is be really creative with small budgets and small teams, and really get maximum return on everything that we do. So I'd say it certainly was one of the challenges early on. It's something I think that I've embraced really well, and often say and talk to the team. We talk about running on the centre of an Ollie rag, but being able to really innovate and lead in some cases in the industry, and it's something we're really proud of.
I think that for many of our listeners who might not be established businesses but might be just starting out, I think it's always good to hear that no matter what size it is, sometimes you've got to work within those budgets, and sometimes you don't have budget and you've just got to kind of make magic happen. There's obviously a lot of noise in that tech space. I mean, what's your advice to those people just starting out around picking the right product for their business, or picking what type of technology to implement?
I think you've always got to have a sort of a view on, or a vision for the future. So I think you can focus on quick wins now. There's a lot of opportunity for quick wins, but I think at the same time, you've always got to be thinking scalability and in the long road, what is that path to success? But at the same point in time, keep agile, and don't be afraid to, at the same point, go down the path of a particular platform or solution that that you ideally will outgrow in a year or two. Quite often now, there's a lot of SaaS platforms out there that have, turnkey solutions, subscription-based, that do allow you to, outgrow things and move on without initially having to put too much time and investment into the platforms. But at the same point in time, I think it's really important to be thinking long term. So if we're talking retail, I think, from the get-go, you've got to be thinking about, getting your inventory right. You've got to be thinking about that single view of customer. Make sure that, in the early days and up front, that you're getting that data in the right shape. And it's not overly hard. It's just about making sure that there's disciplines in place and you're focusing. And it just means that as you go on that journey, whatever platform or solution you're using down the track, that you're going to be able to grow into that and really have your environment and your customer data in reasonably good shape to then accelerate. And it might be that right now you're not ready for marketing automation, but when you are, having those foundations in place from the get-go just makes life a lot easier.
I think that that's really sound advice, especially the fact that, there are lots of options out there for people that, may not have the largest budget, and, being willing to change and kind of evolve with a product, or shifting and changing products where needed. I mean, we've just come back from Big Show in New York and have been exposed to lots of different technology coming, whether it's creating digital avatars of yourself that can be uploaded online so that all your clothes fit, or, robotics, or, just various things. I mean, what do you think the next phase of technology for Australian retailers is?
Look, something that I've sort of, I suppose, spending more and more time looking at and trying to innovate in the space is around contextual commerce. So as we know, you've got platforms like social platforms and, shoppable Instagram and things like that now. And we're on the cusp of the next round of disruption from those platforms. There's, I think, 100 odd retailers out of the US that are, on a beta or a pilot with Instagram, whereby similar to, some other platforms, whereby you can actually upload your delivery details and your payment information and transact in the moment through social media platform, and in this case Instagram, without actually leaving Instagram at all. So there's a lot of this change is happening, and consumers are wanting to really shop when and how they want. We talk about, physical retail with alternate payments, the explosion of buy now, pay later, tap and go. There's still a lot of things retailers can do, Apple Pay with digital wallets and things like that. So I think there's going to be quite a lot in that payment space. Potentially talking about looking at things like being able to transact within an email without actually having to leave that email and jump onto a website. So I think there's quite a lot around that payment in the payment space that I think is ripe for disruption. There's, as you mentioned, the AR piece and the VR piece. I think they'll only continue to evolve, particularly when we've got the next generation of consumers coming through that, in a lot of cases, whether they're gamers or, a lot of them are using this technology and just consider it normal. You've got that new customer that's coming through that, I look at my kids, they don't have a notion of time. 10-year-old daughters, twins, and they don't think about, I want to watch TV at this particular time because this show's on, just the way that they consume on demand. And I think from a retail perspective, we're going to see more and more innovation and evolution around that, that consumer behaviour. The robotics piece, again, automation, in more and more automation that's going into warehousing and fulfilment and things like that, is definitely an area, I see of continued growth. We're already seeing good use of AR, and when devices like iPhones start to do a lot of it natively with like the AR kit and things like that, it's becoming a lot easier and more natural for retailers to use some of these things, whereas in the past it might have been a bit gimmicky, or you might be doing it, just to create a bit of noise or a bit of engagement. I think more and more of these things are becoming staple retail.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that, before, when we talked about AR and, IR and all sorts of things, I mean, I think that people thought that they were, pie in the sky, that they certainly weren't something that was, possible. And now it's all so much about being frictionless in every sense of the word, whether it's, as you say, transacting on an email or simply, getting your goods quicker because it's, managed by robots and all sorts of things like that. I think that it is definitely now almost essential for retailers to evolve into this frictionless space. I mean, Q has got a significant number of stores, obviously in that bricks and mortar format, but also, online. I mean, you talk about kind of viewing that customer as being, the single customer, or, you're looking at the customer, whether they're shopping in store or they're shopping online. I mean, how do you go about kind of managing expectations or drawing that online customer into your stores?
So a lot of it's, it's a big challenge these days. We do see across all retailers, and you see whether it be shopping centres or department stores or high streets, we're seeing a decline in foot traffic. However, I think if, but then again, you hear that there's a renaissance and the stores are, the new black. And I do agree with that. If the experience is right, if the product's right, you will certainly get people, a good volume of people into stores. And I think from our perspective, what we really look at is we want to have as many of the customers that transact with us as known customers, so that then we can market and cross-sell and upsell. It may be that we, whether it's store-based events that we have, but the key to us is, a few years ago we took away guest checkout on our websites, and part of that was around requirements on what we needed to be able to do a lot of endless aisle fulfillment and collection from store and things like that. But by doing that, it allows us the ability to understand who the customers are. They were already providing the same amount of information previously when they were checking out as a guest, only now there's more convenient. They can have saved payment details and things like that. And then for us to sort of bring the channels together, we now see that, let's look at the data as of last week, 57% of our online fulfillment's done by stores. Now, that's a mix of deliveries that will be sent from a store to a customer, but we're still seeing 20+% of orders online that are getting collected as click and collect orders. So that's driving a lot of traffic back into store. I think simple things as well. From the get-go, by having the foundations in place and having that sort of, that unified commerce platform that we now have, that's, drives our retail. It's our POS, it's our ERP, it's our retail management platform. By allowing, things like in-store returns was super important to us from the get-go, and we had to do quite a bit of work. We were the first to launch Afterpay in store. Now, a big part of that was prior to having it as a payment option in store. From the get-go, we had Afterpay integrated for returns. We're one of the first, I think, if not the first in the country, to integrate PayPal returns fully integrated as a payment return option refund into our, that unified commerce POS platform. So it's really about bringing those channels together and giving people, give them reasons to come into store. But it's and just recently something that we've done is we've partnered with Triquestra, who's that unified commerce provider, and Emarsys, and essentially we're utilising Emarsys' recommendation platform and we're injecting that into POS. So now when we have customers coming into store to collect an item, our team members at retail can actually, within POS, click a button and that'll show them the outstanding click and collect orders. They can click on an order, and using the Emarsys recommendations, and it will actually recommend product at your store when the customer comes in for them to, get us put aside and show the customer and look to upsell or complement what they've bought. So I think it's really that, we work very hard to bring the channels together, and what we do in a digital sense, we also push to do in a physical sense. We have shoppable screens in a handful of stores, and as we're refurbishing or opening new stores, we're putting those screens in. And what that means is that we've got a customer that's coming into store. We were offering store to door, so that was where door A, a customer was in, say in Sydney, in our Pitt Street store, and that particular location didn't have a size 10 dress that the customer was looking for. It enabled them to actually transact there and then make payment, and it would push that order through to a store that had the closest possible store to the customer's delivery address to deliver that item to the customer. And then we took it to the next stage where we introduced a shoppable screens. So rather than the customer and our team members potentially huddling around a mobile phone to look at the website, there's a purpose-built app that we've got running on those screens where the customers can browse by range. It may even be that we might have 20 black jackets at any given time. However, that particular store mightn't have or it mightn't be lined. It allows that filtering within this shoppable screen so that, they can shop the entire range from any location. So I think it's really about, bringing the channel together and providing that, where possible, bringing the digital into store as well where it makes sense.
And that's an incredible offering. I mean, certainly for convenience, and I think just that integration, as you say, is really so important. And just, I think, from the demographic that obviously shop at Q, I mean, they must just appreciate, I guess, the convenience of all of those things. And we know that we've seen a significant rise around, consumer activism and certainly a push towards sustainability. How has sustainability kind of shaped some of the decisions that, Q has made, when shipping and just, sourcing their products in general?
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly something that the business is very mindful of, and something. I mean, we're on a journey. I think most retailers are on that journey. For us, it's reviewing everything around packaging. We're soon to go 100% recyclable and compostable packaging from an online delivery perspective. So the parcels will be sent out in. So we're looking to certainly get there. And to be honest, we would have been there by now, except there was some shortages in the material that actually makes some of those products, and particularly some of the better ones. Then there's everything from, our local production. So, first and foremost, looking to keep as many of those jobs as we can in Australia is, I think, super important. It's also reducing some of those carbon miles around, getting product and internationally and getting fabric to locations and then product to Australia and then distribution within Australia. So in a lot of cases, we're trying to reduce, reduce the distance that product needs to travel. And then as far as last mile fulfillment, we're always looking, we've got the systems in place where we're we're choosing the locations closest to that customer to make that delivery. So again, we have the benefit as a multi-channel retailer of having close to 100 stores around Australia. It's enabled us to do 3-hour delivery nationally, which was a huge thing for us, and it's really important for our customers to not only offer these things just because you're in Sydney Metro or just because you're in Melbourne, being able to offer that around the country and including some of those, some of those suburban locations and extending that. The click and collect's been important to us, so the more customers that actually, potentially can head into store rather than deliveries where we can reduce that. But yeah, we're always looking to where we can improve from a sustainability perspective down to the product. There's some exciting stuff that I can't talk about just yet that'll be happening this year, and I'm sure everyone who follows Q will be excited for a few big initiatives that we've been working on that will be that we'll be launching this year. But yeah, so it's definitely something that we've got a big focus on, and that ethical clothing, the ethical production, keeping as many of those jobs local, and also from a sustainability in the product and the material we use is certainly important to us, and it's something we're constantly looking to improve.
Oh, we're very excited to hear about new systems and procedures and even exciting news coming out of our brand. So we'll have to touch base with you once all of that gets launched so you can tell us more about it. I think, our industry is incredibly diverse, and we are, the largest employer of youth in the country. What role do you think retailers play in terms of, kind of shaping the futures of young people in Australia?
Look, it's something that I'm definitely very passionate about, and I think, and I briefly touched on it, and we briefly touched on it at the NORA event this year, the CEO event, where I think as retailers we've got a real role to play in providing a pathway for the youth. I think in this country, and definitely a lot of others for that matter, retail is certainly seen as a stopgap, or it's something I'll do whilst I'm studying. And I think as an industry we really need to provide pathways and traineeships and scholarships, and also really sell the success of some amazing people. I mean, head office here at Q, we've got head of marketing, we've got brand managers, we've got senior finance people, and a lot of them, the exciting thing is a lot of them started with our business in retail. The business is super supportive of providing opportunities. We always are looking within before we look outside when we're looking to recruit. And every day there's more and more people with opportunities that have come from that that shop floor from our perspective, and it's something I think as an industry we really need to take some ownership and really tell that story and get out there and and take that stigma away of, oh, you're a retailer, or you work in retail and there's no real hope for you. These people that are working in retail provide pathways for them to, get into professional industry roles, whether it's finance, legal, technology. I think it's something we certainly need to champion more, and really take away from that idea that retail is, if you're considered a failure, if you potentially buy some family members, or otherwise it's, if you say that you work in retail, particularly at that store level. And then at the same point, there's, a lot of opportunities in retail management. And again, we see a lot of our area managers and regional managers that have really developed and grown within the business. And I think as an industry, we certainly need to get out there and come up with some structure and some marketing and some storytelling and champion, those pathways.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know for us, certainly this year, our young retailer who had worked his way through Haynes or for Bonds while he was doing his degree, then became a buyer for them and has had a very successful career within retail and obviously gone on to win our award this year. I mean, there are so many stories like that with so many incredible people that I think we meet throughout the industry, and just getting, I guess, that message out there, I think, is really important. I mean, do you think there's anything that Q does in relation to that kind of succession planning, that is better than other retailers or that other retailers could learn from? Is there something, do you think they've got some type of, magic that means that people want to stay and work, or that they continue to kind of look up the ladder? Is there something that you think you could, I guess, give to our listeners around, how they might be able to do that within their business?
Look, I think the probably first and foremost, what Q does that, let's say, I don't know how different it is to some other retailers. So what we really do is champion the retail team. So we really see, the business we see is, it's our design team and everything that supports them through the manufacturing, and it's our retailers and the rest of us where we're there to support them and provide the support to allow them to do their job in the best possible way. So I think first and foremost, we do have them on a pedestal, and we really do see that they are, the heart and soul of the business. So I think that's important. I think the connection, we've got the owner and founder of Q, 50 plus years now, Rod Levis, and the amount of time he still spends out in stores, getting to know our retail team. And when those opportunities come up, there's definitely that understanding when you're working at Q and you are out in the retail world that, there are a lot of people who've found their way into head office and into key roles. So I think just the very, where it's not overly structured, it's very fluid. It's probably something we could champion and make a bit more noise about, just to drive the awareness. But it's really, as a business, I think, everyone at head office and everyone, throughout the entire business, there's a real connection between the retail team. And I think that thing's something really important, and we do really value and see them as, as stars of the business.
It certainly sounds like they've built an incredible culture that, obviously communicates really well about, kind of what jobs are going, where you can go, and just obviously utilising the skills that you find on that shop floor. Because, sometimes, you've no idea that someone has design skills, and then suddenly you find out and you've got this absolute treasure that, can really change the face of your business. So I think, it sounds like, it's not just by championing the retail staff, but also just by having those conversations that it would seem all levels must make such a big difference, particularly to those young workers. We hear lots about in retail, I guess, around it's pretty tough at the moment. You would see in the papers, of course, they're claiming it's a retail apocalypse. What do you think the top 3 issues retailers are facing today?
Look, I think one of the top ones is finding good talent. I think that finding and retaining good talent, I think and then that goes back to that point of, people potentially not seeing retail as a career. So if we just look out now at the cold face of retail, I think that's certainly a challenge. I think there's, without doubt, there's more competition in the market. We all know how many options we've got now, and that sort of really kicked off quite a few years ago with the entrance of more and more of the international retailers. Some successful, some not so much. I think, generally the economy, I don't think it's in fantastic shape. But in saying that, we've obviously been, I suppose, lucky comparative to, the impacts it's had in a lot of other places around the world. So whilst it does play a part, I think it's certainly not all doom and gloom. I think the other part is, the media. Like I say, with all these, it's hard for them not to report it, but it just seems to constantly, there's bad stories or things that haven't turned out in the doom and gloom, whereas there's still a lot of opportunity. And I think retailers in Australia can continue to evolve. I think it's something we're doing really well at the moment. I think there's a big appetite across the industry. There's some amazing people, and probably what's and a combination of those factors. People aren't just walking in, the product's just not flying off the shelf like it might have previously in the past. So I think you've got to be a point of differentiation, and whether that's price, whether that's in our case, the product's got to be spot on, the quality's got to be spot on, and I think if you just sort of sit in the middle and you've got potentially a product or a story that's not really it doesn't stand out, I think those retailers are being potentially hit harder, and it's also I don't think it's been happening overnight. I think there's some of these businesses that potentially have been on the edge for quite some time, and as foot traffic's down and we do see some of these tougher environments, I think now we're starting to see the impact of that. That's I suppose my view on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that you're absolutely right, especially when you talk about the reporting of the media, because we know that at this time of year, every year, that there are store closures, and it's not something that just happens overnight. I mean, these businesses know for some time that things are tough, and they're trying their hardest to obviously come through those tough times, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. But there are also so many good stories and so many stories of growth happening in the market, with entrepreneurs or with established businesses just doing something a little bit different and really making great gains, or established businesses that have had it tough and that have really started to focus on what they do best and their retail workers, and really utilizing those relationships that they have with their customers and just changing their businesses for the better. So, I think that there's still lots of good things happening for this industry, and it is really important that, we continue to try and, get that message out there that retail isn't just an industry that you work in for a short period of time, that we have wonderful professionals and that you can grow a very long and lasting career within our industry doing, many things. And we need to see a focus on those skills, and it's certainly something that we spend a lot of time talking to government about at the National Retail Association. Thank you for your time today, Shane. It's been wonderful speaking to you and getting your insights. Is there anything that you would like to say to our audience before we sign off? Is there a last, takeaway message that you'd like to leave, or if you've got a last story that you might like to tell our listeners?
Look, I think from my perspective, the key thing is that there is a huge amount of opportunity, and with change that creates opportunity. I think from anyone in digital or retail in general or technology, it's really about sort of trying to find those opportunities and really maximise them and work to your strengths. To your point then around, retailers sort of getting back to their focus and really doubling down on what makes them who they are. I think that's where there's still huge opportunity. And just in general, you do see retailers now looking to try and get their sort of house in order from retail, what they're actually able to offer and a platform perspective. And previously there mightn't have been the right level of investment or the right platforms chosen. But I think once your house is in order and your focus is, on what you do well as a retailer, I think there's huge opportunities out there still.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.